With Cleveland Browns mini camp in the books, I certainly have some takeaways. My biggest one, the Cleveland Browns defense is going to be even better than it was in 2023 and is going to be the NFL's best in 2024. Let's talk about it. Your latest Locked On Browns starts now.
You are Locked On Browns, your daily Cleveland Browns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends, your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound, LGB, and the LOB, the Locked On Browns podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd, 7 seasons in. Absolutely, you guys have turned me into. I have literally turned into a Cleveland Browns addict. I appreciate every one of you who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. The everyday crowd keeps growing and growing. Do not miss out. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available. It is always free wherever you get your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. I think, and you get through this, and with this defense, and talking about this defense, the Cleveland Browns did not lose anybody that was on the 2023 defense for 2024 that they didn't really want. They weren't chasing, guys, Sione Takitaki who left, Anthony Walker, who also moved on, almost made Walker. They certainly are not going to, lose sleep over losing a Jordan Elliott. It's just not the way it is. This team has been strategically built over the last 2 years, and certainly a ton of focus on the defensive side of the ball. With the acquisition of Jim Schwartz, you certainly needed to bring in somebody with the brains and the proven track record and results that Jim Schwartz brings, and you got to give the guy a kitchen and certainly some ingredients and utensils to work with. We got to hear, Myles talk a couple of times, between the OTAs and between minicamp. And, it's really, really hard to even think about and fathom that we're saying Myles Garrett is about to go into his 8th season in the NFL. Myles Garrett is going to eclipse the 100 sack mark this season. We're starting to talk, about Myles as, certainly a absolute pillar in Cleveland Browns history. The only thing for Myles right now is just, riding out this illustrious career to this point before he becomes the next Cleveland Brown to find their way over to Canton to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I think when you listen to Myles talk now, you hear Myles start to talk more about a reflection on what he's been able to accomplish to this point in his time in the NFL. Certainly speaks about wanting things as far as Super Bowls, continued playoff runs, and he starts to talk about it for other guys and having that define their legacy. Myles's legacy is defined. I mean, at this point, it's just putting some toppings on it like it's an ice cream sundae. Super Bowl ring would be fantastic, but he's got a Defensive Player of the Year award, certainly several Pro Bowls, All Pro. He's lived up to everything you could hope for when you select a player number 1 overall in the NFL draft. There was a lot of bantering back then. And, I even remember talking with people and just saying, well, just take Myles Garrett. Oh, well, Trubisky, and talking about the other quarterbacks. And no, take the Hall of Famer. Take the guy with the Hall of Fame resume. And even as many bad things as the regime did back then, they did get one slam dunk right. They drafted Myles Garrett. And that one has absolutely panned out and then some. But you get to the rest of this defensive line, and whether it was Dalvin Tomlinson talking this week or certainly some other guys, the smiles are ear to ear. You see how much these guys love the situation they're in, love the guys they're playing with, love the guys they're competing with, working with. And it's Tomlinson, you heard it, whether he was talking about JOK, hey, there were plays I thought I had, and all of a sudden, he blew past me and, made the play faster than I could. The respect for each other, the admiration for each other. You have guys who are willing to give their all to find a way to get that Lombardi trophy here in the building in Berea. Players like Zadarius Smith, even after what was probably maybe a little underwhelming when you say you brought in Zadarius Smith last year and what he did as far as the statistical output was last year, you kind of felt like it was a little like, could have been a little more. Maybe felt like Zadarius would go somewhere else. Maybe the Browns would find somebody else. But right away, took no time. Zadarius Smith, right back signed to the team. Shelby Harris, same type of thing. Certainly. Maurice Hurst, same type of thing. Agbo here on a several-year deal. Alex Wright certainly going to be here, and really, really starting to show some growth from year 2 to year 3. He is one of my guys that I absolutely think is going to ball out in 2024. I think people aren't, ready for that Alex Wright breakout year, but it's coming. It most certainly is. And, you have, Mike Hall Jr., who you think is just going to be a future ridiculously good 3 technique. Still working on his run defense, but his ability to penetrate and blow plays up, his quickness and just absolute monster athleticism to just go straight to the quarterback. And you envision that with Myles and Agbo on the outside, or Myles and Zadarius, or Myles and Al. I mean, there's just so many scenarios you can go with this. Siaki Ika was a top 100 pick last year. We're not sure there's a spot for Siaki Ika on the 2024 Cleveland Browns. Crazy as it seems to say that this team might be in the position to have to move on so quickly from a top 100 pick. But it's a deep, deep, talented group. And I think they're just scratching the surface as far as what they can be as an overall unit. There were times last year and certainly, later in the season when Myles was out there basically playing with one arm on his shoulder, basically falling off, but found a way to basically get it, regroup it, and was able to finish out the season with a good amount of strength to it. And it's been an amazing overall change. Defensive tackle was never a priority for this team in the years I've covered it. And now it's not only a priority, it is, a strength, an absolute strength for this team. Even Quentin Jefferson. It's going to be really hard to figure out which 5 defensive tackles are going to make this roster for the 2024 season. Even still at edge too, Elijah McGuire, where he was drafted last year. He could be, kind of on a tough spot here as the 5th end. And, Browns could still be looking around, banting around to try and find another one, bring in even more competition. Jim Schwartz is, the brain, the visionary, but Andrew Berry was the one that put this all together. And it took a lot of effort to finally, right the wrongs that they did as far as getting this defensive line right. But they certainly reaped the rewards in 2023, and certainly a lot more to come in 2024. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. Appreciate everybody for being along for the ride. It is summertime. Do you want to get out and see some music? Do you want to get out and see your favorite Major League Baseball team? Well, prices on the Game Time app actually go down when it gets closer to opening pitch. They got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices used from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying whatever tickets you want for your favorite summertime activities. Like I said, flash deals. You save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or event. All-in pricing, toggling this feature shows the total up front. So this way, when you get to that checkout box, all of a sudden it's not 10%, 20%, 30% higher than you originally thought it was going to be. Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets. Lowest price. Guaranteed. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. I am your host, Jeff Lloyd. We appreciate everybody who makes Locked On Browns their first listen every single day. The everyday crowd, a bunch of great people, but we always love more. Subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel, join the everydayers, and do not miss a drop of coverage. Of course, the show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. Now, you get a lot of people, and you're getting a lot of positive talk for Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah right now. And again, when I talk about this, there's a lot of people going back to 23 game footage and trying to find, positives. And, the more you dig in, the more you see what a player like Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah was able to do in 2023. But I think the Browns made a very, very smart move here with the addition of veteran linebacker Jordan Hicks. Jordan will be 32 years old later on this month. Jordan is coming off of 5 straight seasons with over 100 tackles. And the reason I think this is key, and look, there's going to come a time possibly where JOK navigates his way over maybe to the Mike position. But with what he did last year and just the absolute emergence of his play and the 20 tackles for negative yards, the last thing you want to do now is to start to bog down a player like JOK with having to handle everything that goes on the defensive side of the ball, as far as making calls, making sure guys are lined up right, because that is less and less that JOK is going to be able to focus on his assignment. You went out and find a guy, and no disrespect to Anthony Walker and no disrespect to Sione Takitaki, who did some pretty good things manning the Mike position for the Cleveland Browns over the last couple of years. Jordan Hicks is better. He's got a proven track record. He's been doing this for a decade, whether it was Philly, whether it was Arizona, whether it was the Minnesota Vikings. So he comes in here, and of course there is that Vikings-Browns connection. Again, Kwesi over in Minnesota. So I'm sure Andrew Berry got a positive review on Dalvin Tomlinson. I am sure Andrew Berry got a positive review on a guy like Jordan Hicks. Jordan comes here and just allows JOK to be the playmaker at the linebacker position that he is. Hicks will line everybody up. Hicks will make the calls. JOK, just go out there and just do what you do and be special like you have been to this point in your career. Now, you look, at the rest of that room, and I'll be honest, I was very excited about the Devin Bush acquisition. A lot of it was going to be, is Devin Bush, some of the injuries and some of the things he's been through, did it take something away? Or was it a question of just finally getting himself back to full health, 100% health? And you see some of these drills, you see some of these things going on this week. A fluid mover, and he's moving around the field just as easily as JOK is, just as smoothly as Jordan Hicks is. Pedigree, former first-round pick, number 10 overall. His old man, a Cleveland Brown. Over the last 3 seasons, if you factor in what Devin Bush played, his missed tackle percentage is as good as anybody in the NFL. Then you get to Tony Fields, and you see Tony Fields, it'll be interesting because most likely it's going to be seen if Tony Fields moves on to somebody else, where somebody just lets Tony Fields loose and lets him get a full year's worth of repetitions at the linebacker position, because Tony's a playmaker. And we've seen it in bits and spurts, bits and spots, not last year, but 2 years ago, a game against the Houston Texans where he just absolutely dominated, made plays everywhere. Obviously recovered a huge fumble last year in Indianapolis when Myles knocked the ball loose in the end zone off Gardner Minshew. You still have the kids in Mahmoud Diabate. You still have, Charlie Campbell from last year. Of course, we have Bookie Watson, who literally looks like an edge compared to the rest of this linebacker group. Bookie Watson is a big, big linebacker. And then you just, you see the growth of it and just the excitement of it. And the fact that these guys finally get to perform behind a defensive line with so much talent, so much cohesion, and guys that are selfless. If they got to take on a double team, they take it on. If they got to shoot this gap, that's the gap they shoot. They don't. Look, there was a lot of freelancing at times, and it's certainly been done on the defensive side of the ball during the Berry and Stefanski regime. But when you got name brand talent and everybody's happy about their money and you don't see anybody on the defensive side of the ball complaining about their money, it just makes everything work together. And you have guys that do what they are supposed to do, understanding and having that trust factor that, hey, yes, I'm taking myself physically out of this play, but for the good of the fact that the guy behind me is going to go out there and get it done. And it's really, really clicked in 2023. Now, you've seen it through the mini camps. I mean, these guys are just jubilant. These guys are way too fired up for football in early June. And a lot of that is from Jim Schwartz pushing them into it, enjoying it, celebrating it, embracing it. And a lot of it is just that everybody, I think, as much as they all believe within themselves, there's a great, great respect and admiration from everybody on the Browns defense for everybody else on the Browns defense. And certainly it starts with Myles. And if you all remember the times last year, Myles sitting on a bench, just laughing, not even talking, the superstar, the defensive player of the year, sitting there giggling, listening to Zadarius Smith, giggling as Dalvin Tomlinson just just laughing. Just one of the guys, even though he was a superstar, even though he was the first ballot Hall of Famer, just enjoying every minute of success, of having guys on his caliber, on his par to play with. Now, with JOK, the Browns, when they took him, it was a tad bit of a gamble because you didn't necessarily know by making him a full-time linebacker, he was just going to give you that full-time impact. In year 1 and year 2, there were certainly some bright spots, but certainly with missed time, you didn't get to maybe get the full JOK package. But in 2024, you did. And a lot of it certainly had to do with, JOK truly, finally getting comfortable with who he is as a linebacker, a weak side linebacker, and a damn good one in the NFL. But it also had a lot to do with, having the guys in front of him that allow linebackers to just run around and flourish, to run around and make plays. And it got crazy last year to imagine the amount of plays that Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah blew up in the backfield. There was that Brian Baldinger highlight, of course, the 2 big plays JOK had in a Thursday night game, blew up the little, the jet sweep rather. Then there was the one, of course, there was trying to throw the ball to the back to the out, trying to throw the back out of the backfield. And there were blockers who had JOK, had the angle, had the assignment. And he was just so quick and so decisive that he knew where they were going and just, hot stepped it and beat him to the spot. It's defense is a band. It's about, old buddy Matt Waldman, always about making the music. Well, the Browns defense knows how to make the music, and they know how to play with cohesion. They know how to play with confidence, and it just continues to grow and be really, really successful for this team. And it starts in the front. It certainly exists in the middle, and it certainly exists in the deep end. We're going to continue. We're going to talk some secondary. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. Appreciate everybody for being along for the ride. Your latest Locked On Browns continues. I'm your host, of course, Jeff Lloyd. I appreciate all of you who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. The everyday crowd, if you're not a part of it by now, make a new plan, subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel, and join the everydayers. Of course, the show is always available. It's always free wherever you get your podcasts. I've been talking about how, one of the most important takeaways from me for this past few days, and certainly OTAs in general, and certainly minicamp this week, is just how good this Cleveland Browns defense is going to be in 2024. I think they are going to be the league's best in 2024. Now, if you saw, there were some final highlights yesterday, closed it out with a red zone drill. And these guys were animals, man, everywhere. MJ Emerson, Greg Newsome, Denzel was a spectator. Myles Garrett, spectator for most of the part, did his own camp today. Myles teamed himself. He was going to be all right. Was wearing a sleeve. Look, Myles Garrett's still wearing a sleeve in 6 weeks. Let's talk then. But Coach Stefanski tells me he's fine. I'm going to believe that Myles is just fine. I think there was just one little instance of something, and they said, nope, shut it down. And, a lot of times the practice would have even gotten called at that point. But you get to this secondary, and, you see the celebrations again. Grant Elpit, Genu, Grant Elpit, and MJ Emerson. These guys just truly, truly know what each other is capable of and truly play almost with an admiration of each other's abilities. And I think the toughest thing is probably for the secondary is going to watch this team and the amount of sacks they get and be like, Man, we had a chance for interceptions. We had chances for PBUs. We had chances for pick sixes. You saw it with the Jordan Hicks, interception the other day, shoveled it back to Juan Thornhill, quote unquote, took it to the house in practice, gave a nice big chief slam, got a celebration on. They all got their celebration on. And, to see guys with that type of excitement in June minicamp, as a fan, as an analyst, I don't know how you all don't get excited. These guys truly think that they are it. They truly do. So it's kind of hard for us to believe. If they believe it, we should believe it. And they know how good they are. And again, Ward, Emerson, Newsome, Cam Mitchell, the other corners, Halassi, and then the safeties, and Juan Thornhill, Grant Delpit, Rodney McLeod, for God's sakes. Rodney Hickman was a big-time performer at times last year. D'Anthony Bell, huge play to seal a victory over the Chicago Bears last year. This team on the defensive side of the ball, the depth is incredible. It's going to be really heartbreaking to see some of the guys that don't make the final 53, because you realize that they are really, really good players. And some of them have been contributors for this franchise. But there just ain't going to be room. You can't keep everybody. And that's just how stacked of a roster this team currently is. And certainly a credit to all the players here who have changed the view of this team. Certainly changed the view of this locker room. Guys wanted no part of the Cleveland Browns. Now we got guys, begging to get here. And sadly, we're going to have guys that are going to be very, very sad to have to move on. And it's just, a lot of admiration for the work that's been done between Barry and, of course, Stefanski. The willingness of Jimmy Haslett and his money to make these types of things happen. When you look at it, and, Ward, Emerson, Newsome, your top three corners, it's just crazy to think that is somebody's starting cornerback trio. 2 first-round picks and a guy nobody knew how good Martin Emerson was, and that's the only reason he slid to where he was. The speed, wasn't the best, but there were a lot of other things like 3-cone, quickness, agility drills that showed very well, length that showed very well. We saw MJ Emerson right out the gate, certainly in Jacksonville a couple of years ago, with that pick 6 in his first preseason game. We certainly saw with the 4 interceptions that MJ Emerson had here in 2023, the development, the belief in himself, just as he continues to grow into what it truly has been an absolute steal for the Browns. This team on defense, I don't know where the flaw is right now, and I'm dead serious when I say that. I don't know if they have a flaw. Their pass rush should be off the charts. Jordan Hicks at the mic should make JOK an even better player in 2024 than he was in 2023. And that's saying something. Denzel Ward, MJ Emerson, Greg Newsome, these guys thrived in man coverage last year. And if you want to view it how they did in OTAs and minicamp, they are reaching new heights, continuing to surge, climb as players. They have a sky's the limit mentality. So anybody who views this team, anybody who covers this team, does content on this team, should absolutely feel the same way. I'm almost sad that OTAs are over, because it's going to be about 6 weeks now before we tee this thing up down in West Virginia and begin the 2024 version of the Cleveland Browns. But this unit, especially on the defensive side of the ball, offense, still got some questions. A lot of it's health related. But on the defensive side of the ball, I ain't got no questions. I don't have any questions. This unit is incredible. At the safety position, the cornerback position, the linebacker position, the defensive tackle position, the defensive end position. This unit is incredible. And I think it would almost be an injustice if they are not a better defense in 2024 than they were in 2023. And I will be downright downright stunned if they are not the best defense in the NFL in 2024. Yeah, there'll be a hiccup or two. There'll be a week or two where, maybe they were, guys were a little dinged up, or you were missing a couple of guys and didn't have their greatest showing. Or, maybe Patrick Mahomes got a little bit of the better of him the week against the Chiefs. But this unit is going to be a special unit. And I just want to tell you all now, because I want you all to be ready for it, and I don't want you to miss any of it. Eyes on the defense, 2024, all season long. I'm your host, Jeff Lloyd, and as you guys know, I appreciate all of you who make Locked On Browns your first listen every single day. The everyday crowd is a bunch of filthy animals, but they're my filthy animals. I suggest you join the filthy animals, become an everydayer, subscribe to Locked On Browns YouTube channel. The show is always available. It is always free wherever you get your podcasts. This has been your daily delivery of all things Dog Pound. LGB on ELOB. Let's go Browns.